Welcome, commercial real estate experts, you principals out there who are doing some cool deals. This show is for you. This show is all about commercial real estate, kind of birthed out of our other shows with more general deal flow conversations. But we got a lot of traction and a lot of people after doing a couple $100 million worth of deal flow. People said, we want to learn more about commercial real estate and we want to do more deals. That's where this show came from. So if you would like to come on the show and talk about commercial real estate or look at some deals with us there, it's creprinciples.com. Fill out a quick form. We'll get you on the show. Now let's dive in with our guest, Cecil. We've had multiple conversations about life, about business, about your background and things that you've done for students. But man, I want to bring that story here to the podcast show. Cecil, welcome to the show.
Josh, thank you so much for having me. Great to be here. I really appreciate the time.
Yeah, man. All right. So who is Cecil?
27 years old, based out of Annapolis, Maryland. Commercial real estate broker, real estate investor, and adventurer, husband, brother, son. I think that about covers it.
Super cool. Um, when it comes to what you do, I love how you said, yeah, I do these kind of things, and you husband, son, brother. We didn't really dive into. I lease properties, and I buy and sell commercial real estate, and I did this. Like you spent a lot more time saying, the identities of who you are rather than what you do. Why do you think that is?
It's funny. I'm so driven in business. I love what I do so much. I'm so passionate about it. And, I find myself in circles of people who also feel the same way about business. And it's so easy to constantly focus on those professional, wins or losses or whatever it may be, but just really focus on business in general because it's a lot of fun. But I think, the more I've grown in the business and personally, the more I realize that again, business is, while we're passionate about it, it's what drives us. It's all about relationships that matters and really getting to know people. And if you just focus on the professional and business side, it's just one puzzle piece to something much greater.
Yeah. All right. So let's go back to university. You kind of took the stage early on. I mean, you have a podcast show. You've taped, but like you had an early start taking the stage with some pretty cool opportunities. Why don't you explain what happened when you were in university and the things that you were doing with other fellow students and with some big names out there?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I would say, first and foremost, it was a gentleman named Brenton Hess that really was the charging force behind everything. And Brenton is a stellar investor, coach, and all the above. Also here in Maryland, so I would not be doing my part if I didn't give him credit before I went into anything else. And if I ever say that I did something, just by speaking about it, just know that he was the one who was really driving that train. So when I was in college, I was actually not sure. I had sold Cutco knives. I loved doing it. And then had a little bit of a roller coaster of an entrepreneurial journey when I moved on from that while I was in college. And at one point in time, and actually another friend had posted on social media saying anybody want to get their real estate license for free. I immediately jumped on that. I saw it as an opportunity because I was broke and it was a way to learn and grow professionally. And that gentleman was Connor Moore, to give him a little credit. And Connor had known that I had seen some success selling Cutco knives. And so he said, hey, this guy might be good to help grow a little organization that we're starting at Towson. And he was actually at University of Maryland, to be clear. And so he connected me with Brenton Hess. Brenton connected with me and we immediately saw synergy to be able to grow something really special together. And so that essentially grew into what was Reckon. It was originally the Real Estate Club, and then grew into the Real Estate Club Network, and then grew into just RECN, Reckon. And that had a whole journey. I mean, a really incredible one, where we learned a lot of lessons, fun ones and hard ones, changed a lot of lives, built a lot of incredible relationships, and learned a lot about ourselves. But essentially, long story short, it started with just one real estate club at Towson University that Brenton had started, and he then built relationships with high-powered entrepreneurial students at other universities, and then we built a small group of individuals together, and all of us really were a big part of it. I mean, I don't want to name everybody in for fear of forgetting somebody, but some of the big players, were like Shaquille McRae and Jared Dykes and Jeff Tucker, Austin Carroll, Will Bowman, Eric Llewellyn, lots of other people involved. But anyway, we essentially grew this organization to be across 5 universities, and it was focused on teaching college students how to get involved in real estate and the benefits of real estate. And it eventually grew to pretty large. We had over 5,000 people that we were communicating with, and probably a fifth to a tenth of them, maybe plus or minus 500 to 1,000, were actually pretty engaged across 5 universities. And I would say at the height of what we created, we actually had an event where we rented out the Xfinity Center at University of Maryland and had Gary Vaynerchuk come in as a keynote speaker, along with David Osborne, and then a couple other speakers, Jacob Garlick and Ashley Zahabian, who are just incredible. And I actually got to speak on stage with them as well. And we had about 1,000 attendees come, I think just under, and it was a really, really special moment. And then that ended up just creating a whole bunch of offshoots of a lot of different opportunities for a lot of people. So that was really special. I can go into
Yeah.
more detail if you want, but that's the long and short of it.
So when you graduated college or university, like what happened to the club? What was your involvement afterwards? Like, what did that look like?
I think there was a couple of forces involved where on one hand, we're kids who need to pay our bills, um, you know, and we needed to create a business model. And so I think we established a few different ways to utilize this platform that we had built and create a business model. And anytime you're a young entrepreneur, trying to start a business where maybe you have some models to follow, but nothing that's exactly the way that you would want it to go. It's a roller coaster of a journey, and so we had a few ways that we looked to monetize it. And as we changed, there was a core group of people that really stayed with us and believed in what we were doing. It wasn't for the profit; it was really for the change that we wanted to make. But as a result, we also had just changes in the groups of that were really working with us, and some people really were on board and some people were like, well, let's see what happens. And it changed in a few directions and ultimately came to a membership model. And then essentially after the Gary Vaynerchuk event, Gary sat down with us and our team. Oh, and you know what? John Newman was a huge component as well. Eric Kolash as well. I just want to make sure if I'm not forget, Britannia Howard was another one. So if anybody listens to this up, I want to make sure people are getting the credit it's due. But anyway, we met with Gary Vaynerchuk and essentially talked about our vision. And Gary is a very sharp guy. I mean, everything that you see online is really exactly who he is. Very quick, very focused. Has a deep understanding of the way business works, and essentially sat down with us, talked to us about our business model within 15 minutes, knew what our vision was, knew exactly where we wanted to go, and then painted our 10-year picture for us. And for us, we wanted a little bit different of a 10-year picture. And he said, listen, you guys can do whatever you want, but if you want to make any real money, then it's going to have to go in this direction. And if you don't want to make money, you can go in this direction, but how are you going to make money? And really dove into what the future held for us. And we realized that the way to really build the business to be a successful one with the vision that we had, it wasn't aligned. Our intentions weren't going to be aligned with the actions that would have come from it. And so we switched the model and started doing like a YouTube series where people would get rolling behind the scenes with their investments, and then that kind of changed. I went in one direction, everybody kind of went in their directions. We were all graduating college, and then Brenton kind of took it and ran into continuing a series about people doing a show behind the scenes, and then kind of funneled that into the coaching practice that he has now with his investments. So we're all a strong group of people. We had a core group that still did a few events here and there where it'd be 10 to 15 people, and we'd do a really intimate kind of setting, utilizing appreciative inquiry to really dive into a whole life approach to using our career and profession to be a vehicle for the rest of our life and creating goals and things like that. And then COVID happened, and we haven't really done as much since, but we were all still pretty connected across the board.
Something I want to point out to you and definitely reflect like the what I felt from your conversation just then. You said right off the bat, I want to give credit where credit is due. this person got it started. This person was one of the things that kind of catapulted this forward. And then as you were talking, you started naming names. And you're like, man, I hope, and my fear is that I leave someone out to give them the credit where credit is due. You are very intentional about lifting up others. Has that been something that, like I know that we're not talking specifically about commercial real estate here, but we're talking about the deal maker behind it. Like, has that something that has always been in your life, or something happened and you had to learn that? Like, talk to me about that.
Well, we probably need 4 hours with a therapist as a mediator to really dive into that right now.
I get it.
I think at the end of the day, my wife has been a huge proponent for some of the growth that I've seen personally. I think, my one thing that I'll put myself on a pedestal is she said she only fell in love with me because of my heart. So I think I've always had a big heart, but I think in terms of, how I interacted with the world and things of the sort. I think, um, you know, I I don't know if I want to say that I was selfish or egotistic, but other people might have made those comments about me, and I think it was more of just my upbringing and a few different things put me in a position where I became very self-interested, mainly as a result of just being independent and just being wired to do something myself if I wanted it to be done and solve it myself if it wanted to be done. And I think that kind of grew into, a self-interested component where I'm laser focused. And I think, people talk about the left-minded brain and the right-minded brain and, micro versus macro. And I think ironically, I didn't care about details if I didn't think they mattered growing up, but now I'm super hyper focused on details that, I'm passionate about in this business, and in my personal life. So it's kind of like this weird moral compass where, like, if I think something matters, then I will be like a perfectionist about it. If I think it doesn't matter, I won't focus on the details. So I think the individualistic approach put me in a self-interested mindset where I had tunnel vision, and I think that's when my personal journey really began at a high level. Especially it was, catapulted when I met my wife, and she really helped me realize what's important. And I think she really showed me that everyone around you is what makes you. And so I've tried to be a lot more intentional about making sure that the people that have been along for the journey are accounted for, because no one succeeds alone, even if people think they do.
I want to be more like you in the fact of um, lifting others up, right? I'm a direct connector. I'm a direct encourager, but I want to do a better job at lifting people up, like, publicly, because there are so many people that have to, be involved to make these kind of things happen. And I just want you to know that that was really cool, and I want to be more like that. So kudos to your wife for helping you, who then's helping me, right? So I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you.
If you and I were to go into business right this second selling Cutco knives, what would you do differently? Or what would you do today? Like, you and your, hey, Josh, I got an opportunity for you. We got to go sell Cutco knives. 2022, you and I are going to do this. What would you do today?
Um, well, the way that I built my Cutco business, I think is an incredible way. Just you honestly, and this is honestly sometimes why Cutco gets a bad rep, is you have to start with your friends and family and build referrals. So a lot of people get in there and they're like, oh, they just want you to sell knives to your parents and your parents' friends. And it's like, well, yeah, that is what it is. But then it builds from there. And luckily, it's actually a really incredible product. I don't sell it all anymore. I'm not trying to sell it, but I mean, I truly believe it's one of the best knives in the world. And, there's definitely knives that are quote unquote better. But the whole kind of program that Cutco has with their forever guarantee is special. Enough of the sales pitch. What I would do, differently, I think looking back now, knowing everything I know about Cutco, and it's funny, after I left the Cutco world, I started connecting with like some of like the heroes of Cutco, like the Hall of Famers of Cutco, the real estate and things like that, because a lot of people expand. And I think right now, what Colleen Rippey is doing with Baltimore Real Producers is probably exactly what I would be doing. And Colleen is just one of many of the people that build, this magazine around real estate. But to dive a little bit in, for those who don't know, Colleen Rippey is a Cutco sales professional, and she started off selling tons of Cutco knives did very well. And then she moved into a program that they called at the time the closing gift consultant, the CSG, where she would work specifically with realtors, selling them Cutco knives as closing gifts, residential realtors specifically, engraving these knives and things like that, giving them to homeowners when they would buy houses. And she built a really successful business doing this. And from there, she then expanded. There was a program that was rolled out probably in the last 5 years, but time flies, so I might be wrong on that timeline, where these Cutco sales professionals that were working with realtors found a way where they could engage with these realtors at a higher level. And everybody knows that, real estate professionals typically love to celebrate themselves, myself included. And so what she created was something called the Baltimore Real Producers, which again was just a program that had been created by other people in Cutco. She was not the founder of this idea, but she created the Baltimore version. And essentially is a magazine that highlights the real estate professionals in the industry. And they have essentially a list of the top 500, top 100, things of the sort. And then they do articles and highlight people. But also what Colleen does at a high level is she has events surrounding it. And she also uses appreciative inquiry. And I mentioned that before, so I'll quickly highlight David Cooper, writer, and John Berghoff from Exchange, which is formerly the Flourishing Leadership Institute. But they utilize a method called appreciative inquiry, which is an incredible program on helping build teams, goal setting, and really almost easy way to explain is crowdsourcing, ideas and a plan for the future for specifically for business or for relationships or anything of the sort. But what Colleen does is she organizes the events, small intimate ones, and then large soirees and galas for these real estate professionals. And she's a Cutco sales professional that sells closing gifts. So it's really kind of this hub and spoke model where you've got the hub selling Cutco knives, and then you've got the spokes where you're doing the magazine and you're doing these small events and coaching and things like that. And then, kind of all connects together. And really each one serves the other. And it's a really, really, really incredible model. So if I were to go back into Cutco now, I would probably find a way to be original in some way, shape, or form, and create some type of hub and spoke model to really fuel the business. Because I think one of the hardest things about Cutco is that it's really purely transactional until you build up a large enough repertoire where you have clients that you've had for 10 plus years that want to add to their collection or sharpen or replace and things like that. And then you can build the business from there. But it's, you don't buy knives all the time and you're not investing in knives, right? It's kind of like especially with Cutco, when you can replace them whenever they break or things like that for free, you're not really buying that much more unless it's gifts. So building out a model that kind of fuels itself and creates almost a recurring revenue model, because I think, monthly recurring revenue and some type of recurring revenue is the key to success in business. That's what I would do.
Interesting. So at 27 years old, last time we spoke, 35 million year to date in brokerage, right? Right, commercial real estate primarily.
Yeah, and to clarify, I've collected commissions on about 32.5 million. I actually ran the numbers yesterday, but I've closed, I think, almost 36 now. I'll give you the exact number as of last week. If I can find it here real quick. If I can't find it real quick, I won't say it. But
he's flipping pages. He's looking through his records. But let me just point this out. That's a good producer in real estate, right? In residential real estate, like back in the day when I was a realtor getting started, they had the $1 million club, and everybody wanted to get, when you first start in real estate, like getting in the $1 million club, maybe, you had 5 closings out of $200,000 house, and you're like, yeah, I made the club, and you get a pin, right? $35 million, that's a significant amount of real estate. If you had to guess, how many transactions did it take to get to that 36 point, whatever it was?
Well, I could tell you almost exactly, and I did find the numbers. So
okay.
2022 by execution as of a week ago was 36.2 million. And that's either fully executed lease or settled sale. And 2022 by payout, so I have several leases that still haven't paid out yet, is 32.7 million. Now, that is actually what I am paid on. So that's the kind of like there's different ways that we work in this business. But what's really special is I'm an independent contractor with the company, and where I build up my own business. But then also other people on the team are the same situation as me, and rising tide floats all boats. So a lot of times we team up, and for different strengths and different people in the office, we'll team up on deals and share commissions and things like that. But it's all discretionary, which is really cool. So I've teamed up with several people. Some people have brought me in on their deals and things like that. But I have closed, I think 10 this year, on that 36 million, executed. And I actually did this in this past week. I had another 1.5 million in leases get signed too to add on to that, but they might not get paid out for another 6 to 9 months. Maybe I'll get one payment next couple months. It's hard to say with leases, but but so some of the deals are ones that people brought me in on. Some of the ones that are the ones that I generated myself. Right now I'm responsible for bringing in about 63% of my business, but I think I've closed in the total five. It's November 27th of this year will be kind of my 5-year anniversary. I've closed about 120 some $million in those 5 years, but the bulk of that being in the last two.
Cecil, nice work, man.
Yeah, and I think that's a
really good work.
total of like 95 total transactions, give or take.
Yeah. Good job, man. So
Thank you.
yeah, getting started in commercial real estate, I mean, because you started kind of early at the university doing a real estate club where you primarily focus on the burr and fix and flips, and was that the primary start when you guys were in university?
Exactly. I think I
Cool.
bought my first house when I was maybe, oh my gosh, it must have been 2016. It must have been October or November of 2016. My first house, I think, was $10,000. I didn't put up any of my own money because I had no money. The only money I had was from making Cutco sales, or selling stuff on yard sales or eBay or whatever, and paying my rent at my
Yeah.
apartment. So I didn't have any money. And a guy came up to me and says, "Hey, I got a $10,000 house in Baltimore." He was like, "It's not in a great area, but it's not in the worst. Tenant pays $750 a month." And I was like, "Shit, that's a great deal. I want to invest in real estate." And I had my license. I'd learned about all these things. So I found a buddy and I said, "Hey, you put up the 10 grand, I'll do all the work, and we'll split the profits." And he was like, "All right." And we did it. And then a year later, we bought another two, and it just kind of expanded from there. And built up a small portfolio. What I realized is the homes that we were buying in Baltimore City ended up being a job. And cash flow came in, but at the end of the day, even after we sold those properties, at the end of the day, there was a loss. Now it's because of legal fees, soft costs, interest rates, things like that, like little things that you don't even think about when you're doing a pro forma, at least when you're first building out models. So I didn't really make any money on them. Now on the surface level, what I bought, what I renovated, what I rented, and what I sold for, that absolutely a profit. But when you add in all the soft costs, it wipes it all out. But I learned a ton from doing all of that. I learned not only about owning a piece of real estate, buying a piece of real estate, leasing out a piece of real estate, evicting tenants, collecting rents, and going through those processes, repairing properties, dealing with all that, and selling properties. I mean, and just dealing with all the nuances. It was really just a job, and so that was kind of there. Do you want me to pause for a second?
No, this is keep rolling. I've got a few golden nuggets that I'm pulling from this, and I'm writing them down. Keep rolling though.
Okay. So essentially, those when I just started off in real estate, I was kind of wired and trained and programmed. I was licensed with Keller Williams, incredible company, incredible training. Actually through Brenton, who I was able to get connected at a high level. Keller Williams ended up going into private training. Gary Keller, called Quantum Leap. I was one of maybe 50 people in a room. Did that several times, and probably did it 24 times with Brenton and John Newman. Wendy Hess and Barry Hess, by the way, are Brenton's parents, and they run Keller Williams flagship in Millersville. And Wendy Hess, I'd be remiss if I didn't give her credit. She's the one who paid for me to get my real estate license, and I reimbursed her a year later or so, something like that. But she was the one who paid my way originally. Anyway, so went through tons of training, everything. But some of the kind of program that I went through, mostly due to my own, mentality of just trying to see immediately a logical path forward to building wealth. I thought the more rental properties I get in this fashion, the faster I'll be able to retire. And so it was a really huge focus on buying as many as possible and getting as much cash flow as possible. The only problem is there wasn't enough profit. In fact, there was no real profit. And so I wasn't paying my bills and I had a job on my hands. And so I learned a lot of lessons. So I eventually, and I also learned about partnerships and the pros and cons of partnerships. And I wouldn't have been able to do it with my partner, but I also learned my strengths and how best to work with other people and things of the sort. And so ended up selling off those assets and then jumped into a pretty big flip. Previously I had helped manage some contractors for some very minor renovations, but I really had no renovation experience whatsoever. I kind of just walked them through the house, said, how much is it going to take to fix this thing up? They gave me a number. I said, okay, checked in when it was done. I mean, I literally didn't do anything on that before. So when I knew that I wanted to get into a flip, I was like, all right, I'm going to do this the right way. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it the right way. And so I, did what they call driving for dollars, drove around the neighborhood, but I also knew that I wanted to only invest in an arm's length away from where I lived. Now, quick or tangent here. When I got out of college, because I didn't have any money, I was involved in an organization called Abundance. I was traveling around with them all over. They were paying my expenses in exchange for my volunteer time. And I got to do unbelievable adventures with them, learn from incredible people, get connected with unbelievable people, and got connected with Bigger Pockets team, Josh and Brandon and David, and those guys amongst so many others, and learned a ton. And so essentially I was learning a lot, but I needed a job, didn't have any money. And so I actually took a role as the personal assistant to Mike McCarthy, who was the CEO of GoBundance at the time, and also the regional operating partner for Keller Williams out of Pennsylvania. And I essentially literally just did everything for him in his life, from anything from grabbing a cup of coffee and washing his car to helping build out teams and plan events, and build out software systems and things of the sort. So I really had an unbelievable breadth of experience with him. And I went to every training that he went to. I mean, I traveled with him around, the country and around the world. And literally was participating in everything that he was in. So I got to be a part of some really high level leadership training and things of the sort, got introduced to incredible minds, and used that salary when I was with him to actually buy a house under a moderately priced dwelling unit government program in Eastport, downtown Annapolis. I grew up in Annapolis, bought a 2-bed, 1-bath house, new construction for $165,000 a mile from City Dock. Now I'm in a program where I cannot profit on that home for 10 years. So 2028, I believe, is when I can, 2020, no, maybe 2027, either 2027 or 2020, I can't remember, is when I can then rent that home for profit or sell that home for profit. But until then, I cannot. It was a really incredible program, but right now, market value of that home, depending on who you ask, is somewhere between, even with this correction, somewhere between 275 and 350. With this correction, probably closer to 275, but in the height of the market, probably 350. It really just depends on timing. And so really incredible program I was able to do there. But anyway, so I was living in this house and I was driving around that neighborhood looking for houses, was writing down the addresses, going back, figuring out who owned them, looking at the delta between the tax valued or tax assessed value and what they paid for it, how long they've owned it, the ones with the biggest delta. Even though tax assessed value is not a good way to value a home, that's a quick surface level breakdown of the difference in what profit might be there for the seller. And then got the contact information for all the ones with the highest delta between tax assessed value and what they paid for it, called all of them, asked them if they would sell, found one guy, negotiated with them, put it under contract. And then, and this is another little tangent on the story, when I was under contract, I started getting bids and realized that my construction project was going to be way bigger than I wanted it to be if I was going to be able to really, truly turn a profit. And this was in 2018. So I tried to sell the contract to my builder, and my builder was about to buy it, but then he found out he was pregnant and realized that he wasn't going to be able to do this project, and finish, right as his wife is having a baby. And so he said, "Hey man, I can't do this. I'm sorry." And then I was like, "Oh, it's okay. I'll just go forward with the project myself." Pulled together a quick budget real quick, sent it to my lender. My lender said, "You have grossly underestimated the construction costs of this project. You're going to need to put up more money." And at this time, it was a $435,000 purchase. No, 400. It was $416,000 purchase, and I think I got $4,000 back at settlement or something like that in a credit, something like that. Or maybe it was $424,000 purchase, and I got like 12,000 back at settlement, something like that. Some type of seller help, and I was putting up 60,000 cash, which I didn't have, by the way. I had to raise that from somebody else. And then I had the lender financing the purchase and the renovation. And all I had to do was put up 60. Well, when they found out my construction budget was way under budget for what they felt, a week before settlement, which I hadn't raised any of the capital yet for, except for this main lender, they pulled out and said, "We are not going to finance this for you." Oh, you know what happened? I did have a partner that was going to go in with me, that was going to put up the 60,000. And then when he found out that the lender was backing out because the construction was underestimated, he was like, "Hey man, I can't risk this capital. I'm gonna have to back out of this deal." Super respectful about it, the way that he approached it. No hard feelings with that guy whatsoever. He's an incredible dude. Still work with him and have a relationship with him to this day. But he was just like, "I just can't risk my capital on this." So a week before settlement, I literally had no down payment and no lender. And the lender, what they wanted me to do, I mean, they would have lended, but they wanted me to turn that 60 and they wanted me to put 120K in instead. And that would have just totally crushed the deal because it was a hard money lender. So I literally was like, "All right, we got to figure this out." And so I started calling a whole bunch of, I literally went on Google and looked up every hard money lender that there was, called every single one. I think I must have called 40 or 50. And one company said, "If you put up 60K, I'll do this finance project for you." And I was like, perfect. Call the other, the homeowner or whatever in the team. And they had actually brought on an agent to help them represent their interest in the sale. I called him. I said, "Listen," I said, "I just found the money again, but I don't have the down payment. I'm going to do everything I can to find this." And he was like, "Okay." And they're like on the edge of their seat. Like this house sale is contingent upon a house that they want to buy. They're about to have a baby too. Like I put this couple through hell because I didn't know if I was going to be able to close, but I wasn't willing to back out. And I still had time. And literally, 3 days before, I didn't have the cash, but I had the lender, and all the documents were ready to go, but I didn't have the cash. And I was like, "Fuck." So I literally, excuse my, I'm sorry about that. So I literally start calling. And then I ended up, I got two of my investors on the phone, two guys from GoAbundance, Aaron Amujastegui and Mike McCarthy, was my old boss. And essentially Aaron was like, "All right, I'm intrigued by this deal, but the amount of time you're giving me to make a decision, I don't feel comfortable with that." And Mike was the same thing. He's like, "I want to invest in you." So both of them really trusted me, wanted to invest in me, but they're like, "I don't feel comfortable turning over cash like in less than 48 hours, essentially. I need to be able to review this stuff." And I was like, "Guys, I don't have more than 48 hours. I need this cash now. What's it going to take? Do you want to invest in me? I need you to trust me." And they literally were like, "Cecil," they're like, "I will give you this money if you need it, but I highly recommend you just lose your deposit and back out of this deal. Like, I don't want you to take this money." And I was just like, "Guys, I need this money." And I was so emotionally invested into it. I wasn't willing to take that loss. And this is probably part of ego as well, right? But also, like, I just started in commercial real estate that year. I was making some money, but not enough to really pay the bills yet. I think my first year I made 30,000, and I think 20,000 of that was like in the fourth quarter of the year, right? So I mean, I had a mortgage to pay. I tried renting out my house on Airbnb. HOA cracked down on me. A whole bunch of other stories there. But 48 hours to go, these guys are like, "All right." Both Mike and Aaron talked with each other independently, and they said, "All right, Cecil, here's the deal. If you really want this deal, if you really believe in this deal, we're going to give you the 60,000 you need, but you have to pay us back 90,000 within 6 months. We don't think you should take this money. This is a terrible deal for you. Like, do not take it, but we love you so much. If you are so hell bent on this, like, it's important. If it's that important to you, like, we want to support you. You just have to pay us back 90 within 6 months. And if you don't pay us back 90 within 6 months, then you owe us back 120 within 12 months. And they were like, "This is not a good deal for you. Like, don't take this." But I was so emotionally invested in it, and I said, "Let's do it." They wired me the money immediately the next day. And I went to settlement on time. And that was the most nerve-wracking probably experience ever. Now, get into this house. I'd spent half the time while I was under contract trying to sell the contract to somebody for a quick 10 grand. The other half of the time I spent trying to raise the money. I had spent zero time actually budgeting and coming up with a plan. I had no resources. I had no people to go to, except this one builder that had backed out from buying the contract from me. And he, like, number one, he's just an incredibly nice guy. His name Rich Nelson. He's with Bohan Contracting. Him and Brian Levy over there, and Mark as well. And forgive me, Mark, I don't know your last name. But they actually literally gave me their spreadsheet with a full breakdown of what they thought my budget should be. From the material, unit count, labor, all of the above, like in detail. And I'm a numbers guy, so I took that and ran with it. Asked them for referrals for a whole bunch of people. They actually referred me to the framer and carpenter that I ended up using, and my plumber I actually found a plumber through a friend, and they referred me to the HVAC crew. And then I had a couple of friends who were contractors that did everything else. It was a single story Cape Cod. We ended up ripping off the roof and building a second story and redoing the entire house except for one bathroom that they had just redone before they sold it to us. And the whole house, all of that project, all in back in 2018 and carrying into 2019. I think it was a $205,000 construction project all in. So I bought it for, I used to know these numbers off the top of my head. So I must have bought it for $435 with a $21,000 credit or something like that. It must have been something, because I think my net purchase price was somewhere between 406 and 412 or something like that. And we could probably look this up on tax records so I could find the closing settlement statement. But anyway, somewhere between 400 and 430,000 is what I paid for it. And I did get a credit back that, kind of split the difference between that delta there, that $30,000 delta, or whatever it was, to help me get some more cash at settlement to cover up the little bit that I needed. Anyway, all of that $205,000. So bought it for, let's say, 435 net price, maybe 420, put 205 into it. So I'm all in for, say, 605, give or take. But what was crazy is at the 6-month mark, or like 5.5-month mark, I had run out of funds. Yeah. I had another draw that was going to come, but that draw wasn't going to come until more work was done. And that draw wasn't going to cover all the work that needed to be done. And I had to pay these guys $90,000, or else I would have owed them $120,000. And I'd run out of money to finish the project. So I called and called and called and called and called. And this is funny. I will share this. My father, who has said no to me my entire life, who said I need to learn every lesson, literally let me go to rent court in college when I couldn't pay my rent, because he was just like, Cecil, you'll always have a place to stay, but I need you to get evicted and have a night out before you come home. Right. I mean, it was that kind of like, he's very successful, but he was like, you need to learn these lessons. You know, every time I asked him for anything, he would never give me anything. My mom, on the other hand, who didn't have much, literally would, if I asked her for anything, she would give me literally everything she had. She just didn't have anything at all, material wise. So I had different dichotomy there as a relationship growing up. They were divorced, so it was a little bit separate parenting mentality. But anyway, so I called my dad and he goes, Cecil, he goes, is this really a good deal, or are you just asking me to bail you out? And I was just like, and truthfully, like this like opportunity, I knew that I could sell it for at least $800,000. I knew that. And I knew that the more time went on, the more we could get for it. And so my dad was like, all right, he was like, I will give you this $90,000 to pay these guys, and I'll give you the extra amount that you need to finish your project. So I think he ended up giving me $150,000. And he said, in exchange, you're going to pay me a $10,000 fee, and you're going to pay me 20% interest.
Oh man.
So he gave me it was like $150,000 or something like that. Or I think he gave me like if it was 150, then he gave me 140 because he immediately took the fee out. I paid off those guys immediately. They were like unbelievable. Like they were in disbelief. They were just like, we just got 100% return on our money in 6 months. And like, they started bragging to all their friends. It was really funny. And then some of their friends heard that I lose money on this deal, by the way. But some of my friends heard, they're like, hey, I don't think you should brag about that. I'm pretty sure he lost money. And they called me like, hey, are you okay? Like, how'd you pay us back? And I was just like, I'm Cecil. That's what I did. I paid back my investors. Right. But anyway, so I finished out the project, actually listed on the market 2019 Father's Day. And there was a little bit of a hiccup with how we listed it and everything like that. I tried to essentially I hired realtors, even though I was licensed, to sell it for me, because I wanted somebody who really had connections and things like that, knew how to do it the right way. Um, and Essentially, they had recommended a certain price. I wanted to go at a certain price. And we agreed to go at my price first, but then drop quickly if it didn't work. And then they put it out on the market for a pre-listing at the lower price accidentally. And we got a ton of traction, but then we put it out to market at my price, and that traction just dropped off. So that was a whole nother lesson. These realtors are fantastic guys. They build really successful teams. They're very good at what they do. Kevin Stott, Phil Gerdes. It was my fault, and how I handled that whole interaction. But we ended up selling at $795,000 with a $5,000 seller credit. The house was beautiful when it was done. It was really incredible. And I walked away losing about $40,000, give or take. I ended up paying my dad back 6 months later in full. And I had to pay extra interest, 20% interest on any outstanding balance. So I ended up paying him, I think, like $170,000, give or take, after he gave me like 140 or something like that. And anyway, long story short, that house now, I sold this, I think November of 2019 was when it officially sold, November 3rd, actually, or 2nd. And that house now, and who knows what it's worth, but the next door neighbor's house just sold for 1.25 million. The house across the street just sold for 1.3 million. The house across the street and to the left sold for 135. Before I'd sold it, I tried to call everybody. I'm like, guys, my interest payments are $6,000 a month. We can rent this thing for $4,000 a month. If you just help them co-sign with me and refinance and are willing to lose $2,000 a month, I swear to God, we'll sell this thing and we'll get so much equity down the road. I know it. But it's all speculation. And a lot of people did not want to invest in speculation, especially since a lot of people I was calling were veterans of the 2008, 2009, 2010 kind of downfall. And they said, you just gotta cut your losses. But if we had held on to it, even if we had paid $6,000 a month and lost $2,000 a month for 2 more years, we would have lost $50,000 in 2 years, plus maybe a little extra. Let's say we would have lost $75,000, but we would have gained about $300,000 to $500,000 in equity. So it is what it is. I paid off all of my debts about 6 months after, when I started closing some more deals in commercial real estate. And then essentially then I ended up working to pay off all of my debt. And then I had started to build up a massive business in commercial real estate, and then COVID happened. And that just changed everything. And I literally was about to run out of money like May of 2020. And then I got a PPP loan and an SBA loan. And that helped me build the systems and put everything in place that I needed to have in place to set me up to have my biggest years yet. And in 2021, I did $60 million in business. And this year to date, I've closed on paper 36.2 million, actually probably 37.7 million now, and collected about 32 million. Collected on 32 million.
Yeah. Cecil, holy moly.
And I just bought my new house and renovating, and bought a rental property this year. So anyway, that's where I am now.
Yeah. You're a deal guy. Me too. What I love about this story is I've done similar things. I've been so attached to a deal that smart people were like, back out, get out. I'll help you, but it's going to cost you, right? And I think those are such great lessons that, from your dad's perspective and those guys who gave in, they're like, hey, we're going to do this deal, but it's not a good idea. And the ego that you said is probably ego, cost you how much, do you think?
Well, in money,
Yeah.
probably close to $60,000 or more over time. But I honestly, like, everything happens for a reason. I wouldn't change a thing. And I am where I am now, and I'm in the headspace that I'm in now, and I approach life the way I am now because of all of that. And I just finished a huge construction project on my new house and moved in, and I was able to do it for 2/3 of the price that we thought we could. While it was still slightly over what I budgeted, what I wanted, we really saved a lot of money and built a really something special because of the experience. And that's just one example.
Yeah. So I agree with you, right? Like, looking back, I made some massive mistakes, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and just like, oh man, like, I made a lot of bad decisions in my life, but I wouldn't change them because it's what created me. That's what made me into the man and the deal maker that I am. And when I'm looking at an investment, like I'm like, nope, I've made those bad, decisions 33 times, not going to do them again. But what I really enjoy about hearing your story, great. By the way, you're a really great storyteller. I'm not going to give you too many compliments here, but you're a good storyteller. Like I enjoyed hearing that. Is the grit and the fortitude of pushing forward when you set your mind to something. I think as deal makers, we always have to learn: is this my ego, or is this my gut instinct telling me that the deal is good? I think if you had more time and more capital, that deal would have worked out really well. But I'm glad you learned those lessons, just like the lessons I've learned in the past.
Well, and a quick tangent.
Yeah.
I learned so many lessons that I did poorly on that deal where I lost money, specifically, and I did a whole 20-page after action report of every way that I could have made a better decision and not lost money. But the fun comment I always like to say is to bankers when I talk to them, I say, if you had banked me and trusted me on this deal, I wouldn't have lost money and we both would have made money. Because a bank would have charged me 56,000 in interest, and I think I ended up paying over 112,000 in interest on that deal, in total, right? So anyway, that's just a little side thing. That's what I like to say. So that's my pitch to banks now.
Yeah. So super awesome, man. You have such a bright future in deal making. What advice do you have for other, deal makers about when to know if it's an ego-driven thing or if it's a gut instinct that this is a free? How do you balance ego and gut?
I think if you're looking at a deal and you have to start to change your numbers that you had already felt really strong about in order to make the deal work, I think you should really start questioning whether or not it is a deal, and whether or not you're emotionally attached. And I think that's a really good indicator because I think when you're first looking at something and you do a quick underwriting, you break it all down and you say, all right, what does this look like? If the numbers are strong and you feel good about it, and then you move forward, as long as they stay strong or get better or just a slight variation, then you feel comfortable. But if you find yourself having to make a lot of adjustments to make the numbers look better, I think you should really ask yourself, is this the deal that I thought it was, or is this my ego getting in the way? The only caveat that I would say to that is, sometimes there are other variables that come into play, and sometimes there is that speculation component where it's like, I know I need to change this now to make it work, but I really, really, really believe in this panning out over time. And so I think it's a little component there, but I think that's the easiest indicator. That's a red flag if you start to change your numbers to make a deal work.
Now you've done some deep introspection on life and personal growth. When it comes to emotional intelligence, you know your strengths, you know your weaknesses. When you're looking at a personal deal, right? As a broker, we could say, as a transaction broker, it's just like, hey, A and B, let's put them together, make it sense. If you're doing a fiduciary role where you're representing someone, providing guidance and such like that, you could say, this is my opinion, do with it what you want, right? But for yourself, when you're making a personal investment, when you're investing, like, how do you know you're being honest with yourself? How do you know, like, that emotional thing of going, Josh, I've seen you do this before. For me, example, Josh, I've seen you do this before. You might need to pause, pray, process this thing, and this might be a deal you just have to go wholesale out to another person because they could run it better, manage it better, do something better with it. How do you do that?
I think because I felt so much pain, even though I know people have lost way more money, the amount of pain that I felt from the money that I've lost is really still strong with me. At the same time on that house, it was such a huge feat that I even finished it and sold it for the price that I thought, that even though I lost money, it was still like, wow, that really worked. But I needed to lose money because I needed that blow to the ego, right? I needed that check. And so now when I look at deals, especially with all my experience, or I say all my experience, the experience that I had investing in Baltimore City, I really know what I like about real estate investing, and I know what I don't like about real estate investing. And my ultimate goal is to just be investing fully in commercial real estate and doing some development down the road. But I also know that starting off, I work better investing only my own capital with no partners, bringing capital partners later on other deals. And so I'm taking it a little bit slow. So I think the biggest thing that I think my wife has taught me that I've learned is just my need to slow down. And I think the hardest thing about that is my biggest strength is my speed, my fortitude, my ability to persevere and move forward no matter what. But at the same time, because I go so fast, if I slow down, I'm still going faster than, you know, the majority of other people proceeding with something might. And so that's kind of my check, is to be able to slow down with something and know that if it's meant to be, it will be. Don't rush it. Again, I might sound so great talking through some of these things in real life and in action. Sometimes I don't always act the way that I intend. So let me also state that, because my wife will listen to this, she'll say, Cecil, you really made yourself sound great. What about this time where you did this? And what about this time you did this?
What about
But
A, B, C? I got it right.
Exactly. But I think at the end of the day, slowing down is a key component. And I think is having a set of rules for what works. So for me, right now, I'm just buying turnkey, condos or townhouses that cash flow at 6% after debt service. That's my big thing. It's 6% after debt service, no matter what is my requirement. I make sure that I have, capital reserves, and I make sure that it's almost a turnkey investment for my rental property investments. I'm not looking to do much value add or anything. I'm just looking to place capital. I'm a big spender, and so if I put my money into real estate, it's the best place for me to put it, because it'll go somewhere else if I don't. And so my rules are 6% cash flow after debt service. My rules are almost turnkey. My rules are arm's length away, in terms of I need to be able to drive there within 20 minutes or less, because right now I manage everything myself. But I do build in a management fee before that 6%. And I pay myself that management fee, so to be prepared where if I ever need to hire a manager, then I can easily transfer that cash over to them. And so again, that's 6% cash flow after debt service and after a management fee, which is, I think, actually, relatively good. Returned. I know a lot of people want to go for 10% plus, but for me, the other thing that I learned is real estate is a slow play. So any deal that I look at, I know it's not going to get me rich. I mean, and if it does, that's lucky. I'm looking for singles. I'm looking for all singles. And if I go into a real estate deal thinking it's going to be a home run, if it is, then obviously I'll pursue it. But I really need to put myself in check. So slowing down, sticking to my rules, making sure I focus on those. And then also not doing too much at once, really asking myself, do I have the bandwidth to tackle this? Even turnkey rentals, depending on the tenant, obviously can be a ton of work or no work at all. My goal is to make them as passive as possible, or as passive as they can be. And so just making sure that I have the bandwidth to get it to that place where it can be as passive as possible. And if I don't, then now's not the right time, because that means that I'm going to be too distracted to focus on some details that need to be focused on. And then the other final thing is just knowing that, even though I'm so driven professionally, and we talked about this at the beginning, it's the relationships around you that matter. So if I'm doing something that is taking away from my relationship with my wife or my relationship with friends or family, then I know that I'm doing too much and I need to step back. And sometimes if I'm in the middle of something, or if I really want to take something on, I will take it on for a short period, much to others' chagrin, because it's just in my blood. But I'm even working on that, and figuring out how to have the pieces in place where I find a really cool opportunity. I make sure that I have others buy in. It's not just me that's making that decision, because it's really important, especially if stuff gets tough, to have the support from others. I don't know. I could keep rambling, but does that answer the question?
Yeah. You did a 20-page report on the, post-action of the deal, of what went wrong. What did you call that report?
So that's not an original name by me. And full disclosure, I'm not in the military, nor have I been, but an after action report, or AAR, I believe, or I was told, was trained by a guy who was in the military, that, essentially after any mission or after any training session or after anything that, people in the military will do, they will do an after action report, and they'll essentially break down what happened, what went well, what has room for improvement, and things of the sort. And so I had a lot of time on my hands after that deal, and I really wanted to dissect what went right, what went wrong. And so I just spent a shit ton of time breaking down every component of that deal. And I built out a spreadsheet and I built out a resource page and everything. I told myself every deal I do in the future, I'll look back at that. Full honesty, I haven't looked back at it, but because I spent the time doing it, I understood the different components at such a high level. So I just did another $200,000 renovation on a new house. A little bit different because we're moving into it. But I had the resources handy. I had the knowledge of the process. I understood how to manage the team because I was the general contractor, and I understand all the different components, and I understood how to negotiate. I understood when not to negotiate. I understood the whole process, and we did $200,000 renovation in under 10 weeks. So that was really, really special. I probably pushed myself too hard and too fast, and I wasn't as good of a husband as I should have been during that time. But now I get to make up for it in a new home with my wife, and create a special memory there with her, and things like that. So
Super cool, man. Cecil, you've got a podcast show that is, I guess, getting traction again, right? Like you're diving back into it because you enjoyed the process and you enjoyed what you're doing. Give a shout out to the podcast that you have, and where could people go to find it, listen, and give a raving review on it?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for that compliment that is probably much over-deserved. It was a podcast that I started in 2020 during COVID, did 12 or 13 really incredible interviews that I really enjoyed. I have not revamped it yet, but you are helping me get back into the zone of doing this, because I do love talking with people, and even if nobody listens, I love to just do it and talk about this kind of stuff. So first and foremost, anybody can find anything about me at my website, www.cecilcummins.com, or just cecilcummins.com. That's CECILCUMMINS.com. My podcast is CRE Insights with Cecil Cummins. It's on Spotify, iTunes. I guess iTunes doesn't exist anymore. Apple Podcasts. All of the above. On my YouTube channel, it's under Cummins Consulting, so you can see the actual videos of some of the interviews that we did there. And then the brokerage that I'm licensed at and part of the team here, really incredible team, is Hyatt Commercial. You can find more about what we're doing at Hyatt Commercial on the website hyattcommercial.com. And anybody can feel free to add me on social media too.
Oh, awesome, man. Yeah, and we'll put that in the show notes below. There's probably a question. We're almost out of time. I've got a few more minutes. There's probably a question, though, that I should have asked you that I did not ask. What is that question?
Oh, man. I don't know. I mean, I guess I always like to, ask people, tell me something good, or tell me, what's something that you're looking forward to in the future. So I guess on a personal note, my wife and I are going to see Elton John this weekend.
Awesome.
So we're very excited about that. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I could think of other things, but I like adding in a little bit of personal too, because that's what drives everything else and keeps everything else grounded. So make sure you have fun and enjoy life too.
Tell Sir Elton I said hello if you see him. Not that he knows me. He'd be like, Josh, who? The podcaster, right? So Cecil, thanks for coming on the show. Fellow deal makers in the audience, as always, reach out to our guests. Their contact information will be in the show notes below. The purpose and mission of anything that I do and all the deals that I do is to put deals and deal makers together. So as you're listening to people, connect with them, find a way to support them and do a deal with them. If you have a deal that you'd like to talk about or, educate the community on for commercial real estate, head over to CREprinciples.com. We focus on the principles, the things of how to do real estate. And we also focus on the principles, like the who is behind the deal, right? So it's a great place to go if you want to share your story and share some advice and some insights with the community. CREprinciples.com. Till then, love you guys. Talk to you all in the next episode. See ya.